Alright, class. We're going to get started learning about shading, but shading falls into a much bigger category. And when we talk about shading, we're actually talking about the visual element known as value, which means lightness and darkness. And the lightness and darkness of what? Well, it could be the lightness and darkness of a shadow, the lightness and darkness of a line, the lightness and darkness of a color. Okay? So, to give you an example as it relates to drawing, you look down here, one of the hands that I sent to you for drawing in modified line contour, you can see lightness, darkness, lightness, darkness, lightness, darkness. The edge of the hand is actually right here, but that is a real strong edge of light because light is shining in this direction in this photograph. So edges of the hand over on the left side, you see they're all lighter, and as you come across to the opposite side they get darker. So we've got lightness and darkness. So in drawing, the way we show that is through shading, and so that's what we're going to practice with using one of the diagrams that you did for linear perspective, and I'll show you in a second. But the technique we're using is known as hatching. It's very clean, very smooth, and it's important to remember that when you're hatching, you're using the point of the pencil, and it has to be sharp. So you want to make sure that you have your pencil sharpener handy, because you want your point of your pencil to always be with a nice sharp point on it. Okay, so let me show you that technique. Okay, this is one of the diagrams from the One Point Perspective project. Okay, and over here on the left I've got an example of linear perspective with some stairs as the subject matter. Okay, now you can see, different from this diagram to this one here, what we have that's different, we have our contour lines, right? You can see them here, and you can see your guidelines, but we have shading to show that this side is darker than the top and front sides of the steps. But we can see that as we move along to the opposite end, things get darker. So we have light changing. More than likely our light source is right here, maybe more like a spotlight, and as we move away there's less light, so it fades, the light fades and the shadows start to grow. So what's the technique? I'm going to show you here. It's hatching. You're using diagonal parallel lines, and you know, as we're starting out, these contour lines are going to help us, because to shade all you're doing is you're moving, putting the point of the pencil down, and you're pulling the pencil diagonally across. Okay, diagonally across, and I'm going to fill in some of the extra spaces here. Clean, all diagonal. I'm going to come back in this direction because it's a small area. I'm using a number 2. Okay. Now I'm going to pretend that the light is coming from back here this way. So that means the light, and I'm going to also shoot it at an angle. So that means the light's going to maybe come over part of the top here, but not going to hit the back. And it might come over the top here, but not come all the way to this edge. So if this is nowhere near the way the light is coming, well, this is going to end up being darker, but for right now I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to keep with my number 2 pencil. Keep the same direction. Don't worry. You don't change directions. You keep it even and precise. So I'm going to run this over with a little bit of, you see, I'm just holding the pencil steady and I'm really just moving my wrist down at an angle. Now if you're left-handed, you're going to switch hands. Let me do this real quickly. And if you were left-handed, you'd be making your hatches in this direction. Okay? So they're going to differ for a lefty. Instead of going in this direction, they're actually going to go in that direction. Okay? The last thing you want to do is get all awkward and start trying to do this so you can make the angle the same as the right-hander work. Alright, so again, if you're left-handed, your hatches will go in this direction over the whole shading that you do, whether it be on this side or that side. Just like I've shown you here with the right-handed hatch. Let me go back, do this again. Use the number 2. Okay, let me get it real close. Use the point. Don't use the side. You see, you get that real grainy stuff, which makes it hard and to vary or control. Use the point. Right? Use the point. See, I'm going to let some of this unhatched, and I come over the top and do the same thing, same angle. Don't change angles. Right? Now I'm going to switch pencils and go to 4B. Remember, the bigger the number, the softer the lead. The softer the lead is the darker your marks will be. Well, Ant wants to join in on the fun here. Okay. See, now you can see it's noticeably darker because the lead from the pencil is softer. So I'm going to come back. Clean, clean, clean. So I just start here at the edge of your contour and pull back. Edge and pull back. And try to hold your wrist steady with your finger. Hold your finger and the pencil steady and just move like this. That way you can keep the same angle. Okay, you see that? Alright. I'm going to press a little harder. I don't want to go digging for another darker pencil. I'm going to use this one again, the 4B, and I'm going to press a little harder. A nice trick to help keep your point on the pencil is you can rotate your pencil as it goes across the drawing surface, and that helps keeps a point on it. I'm going to go into some of these gaps here and throw in a few more lines. Okay, alright, so now you've got this value, this is a little lighter, and then that's even lighter. Okay, so I'm also going to just darken this a little more. Okay, and I'm going to leave that top edge light. Okay, so now you've got some shading onto that box to make it seem more three-dimensional, to make it seem like it's formed now, like an actual cube instead of a diagram with a cube. You can do the same thing up here. Once again, I'm going to use my 4B this time. I'm maybe going to go a little darker than I did down below. I didn't bring out my ebony, which is my 8B. I could use that. Let's give it a little pressure up here. But now I've only got two sides. Down below I had 3, now I have 2. So I'm really going to go to town on this one. Now if this was a much bigger drawing, we'd do the same thing. Use the hatch and your strokes would need to be longer. And if you're doing that, you're going to need more of your arm involved. See? So now you hold steady and you just pull it all the way across. Okay, so that's if the cube was, say, this size here. Well, you'd have a lot more room to cover now, wouldn't you? Okay. All right. Gonna come back here again. So we're gonna practice this on a larger scale, but in the first go around, I want you to keep it small to get the hang of it. And one of the problems that usually happens is when you're not holding your wrist steady enough, you're going to end up with curves in it. And we don't want curves because the box isn't curved. See, when you're moving your pencil like this, now you're going to get that problem. We want the lines to be straight, so that means we have to move our wrist in the direction that we want the hats to go. No bending of the wrist. Okay. Come back here again. Press a little harder. Come back here and press a little harder here to get an even darker shadow. Okay. Alright, so now you have a little more volume, a more massive, weightier appearance. See, even like this, I'm just skimming over the top. I'm going to go over that one and go over this one again. And if I go outside my contour, okay, I can just take my eraser and clean it up. Alright, so now you have the beginnings of shading. So a couple of things to remember. The point of the pencil, point, not the side. Not the side of the pencil, not this. See how it gets grainy and it looks rough. So our boxes look real smooth. So we want the point. So that means we're going to need to keep an eye on the tip to take it, sharpen it. We want a steady angle, the same whether you're here or on the top. Let me just give you another example. Well, one thing we don't have is something else that you'll come to realize, and that is a cast shadow. A cast shadow is a shadow because my light is coming this way, right? So that means I'm going to have a shadow in the back. Now actually I said it was coming up at an angle, which means it would come and look something like that. Okay? And probably be shaped something like that since this has a corner on it. Let's go ahead and just make it straight. Okay, so that's going to be what I'm dealing with my cast shadow. Again, same direction for the cast shadow. The same direction. The same angle. It doesn't change. Whether you're dealing, and if there was another box here that I was going to draw, the same thing. The angle remains the same. Don't change angles. It keeps the drawing orderly, clean, and consistent. Okay. So whenever you're looking at something that's near a light, I want you to start taking notice at where shadows are. Okay, I'm going to do this just like I did the box. Start here along the edge and go in the other direction. Again, see how the angle is the same whether I'm in the box or outside the box. Okay, so now I'm getting to get a cast shadow, which is starting to even add more dimension. But look at things. For instance, I showed you a drawing of the hand or a photograph of the hand to talk about lightness and darkness. Now when I put my hand here near the drawing board, see if I can create a shadow. Well, you see a little shadow of the thumb. You see the shadow of the thumb? That's also going to help. Look at my thumb. Where's the light hitting my thumb? And where's my cast shadow? Okay. So, start looking around at things in your environment. First of all, start looking at things that are geometric. Oh, it could be like coffee tables or end tables. Things that are geometric, even some of the furniture. Or if you've got paintings hanging on the wall, posters hanging on the wall, look at how linear perspective is evident. A picture hanging on the wall might look like this. Okay, a 1-point perspective. All right, a coffee table, depending on where you're sitting, might look like this. You might see the sides of it and the top because it's 2-point perspective. Okay, of course, if you're over here looking this way, it's going to end up following more closely to the diagram that you worked on with 1-point perspective. Okay, all right, so this is a good start. I want you to take the drawings that you did, the diagrams, and practice the hatching on top of them. Okay, practice the hatching on top of them. Make sure there's some difference between the sides, like this, so they're not the same. This is a value, this is another value, and this is another value. Remember that term, value, lightness and darkness. So we've got 3 different values in this diagram, 2 here. And so now that one there. Actually, we got 3 because I forgot about the 4. I guess we got this cast shadow to contend with too. Okay, I'm also going to send you a PowerPoint that generalizes the topic of value and shows you some examples, which you should look at also. All right, thanks. Continue drawing. I'll send some images for you to draw from. But first, start out with this. All right, those diagrams, and then I'll send you some other images that will once again be projects that will engage both value and perspective. All right, talk to you later. Thank you. Bye.